Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my books and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. And if you're looking to on Twitch, and if you're looking to support me, that's on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 2 of A Series of Death. Trembor entered his parents' house to screams. "How could you do that?" his father yelled. "Because it's my own fault." His brother started volume just as loud. "Don't you swear in the house, Bullifin Golden Mane. I won't have it." "Of course you won't," Bo yelled. "You won't let me do anything. I don't even live here anymore, and you're still trying to run my life." Trembor hurried to the living room, ignoring Sarek's head shaking from the kitchen doorway. "I'm trying to keep you from ruining it," Torim yelled. "You have sons you need to look after. You shouldn't be wasting your time and money on that." "Don't you?" Trembor forced himself between the two lions as Bo raised a hand. "Okay, why don't you two take a breath and step away from each other?" As gently as he could, he pushed them apart. His brother growled at him. "I know it's family dinner," Trevor said, "but I thought we were eating what the females brought back, not each other." Neither of them smiled at the joke. "Any idea when they'll be back?" Trevor asked his father. Torim stopped glaring at Bullifin only long enough to shake his head. "They left an hour and a half ago." Trevor took his brother's arm and pulled him toward the exit. "Why don't you come with me so Dad can go back to his reading until the females get back?" Can get his dialogue. Bo bared his teeth at their father before letting Trembor lead him out. "What was that?" Trembor hissed as they entered the kitchen where Sarek and Juras washed dishes. "Baring your teeth at Dad like that? Did you turn into a cub all of a sudden?" "I might as well, for the way that old man's treating me." Trembor noted the other two's folded back ears and tail hugging their legs. "Okay, what happened?" "He just went off on me," Bo said, pulling his arm out of Trembor's grip, his ear still back in anger. "Dad never just goes off for no reason, Bo. He blew up at me because I went to a gambling house a few days ago." He threw the cooler's door open and took a bottle of blood out. Sarah cringed. Juras took a glass out of the cupboard and placed it on the counter. "You told him?" Tremor asked in disbelief, knowing his history with them. "I didn't mean to tell him, okay?" He messily filled the glass. He said something about how horrible those places are, and I just said they weren't that bad. He demanded to know how I knew something like that, so I told him. There's no reasoning with that male. "For good reason," Sarek grumbled. "Oh, you're going to take his side too?" Both turned to face his brother and spilled more blood, tail lashing. Trevor stepped between them. "He's not taking sides, and you know it. And you know Dad's right. If it wasn't for Serene, we wouldn't have this house anymore because he would have gambled it away. She's who got my mom and yours to take him down and force him to stop. You know how sensitive he is about the subject, so maybe you can be more careful. He started it." Trevor chuckled. "What are you, 4?" Bo's hair went up in surprise, then back in embarrassment, almost vanishing into his golden mane. He let out a breath, calming the front of his mane out of his eyes finally. "I get he had a problem, but I'm not him. I just go once in a while, drop a bit of money on a few games to relax after a hard day." He shrugged. "It's harmless fun." Bo's here. "He's right," Juris said. "There's been research done. The adrenaline rush players get is similar to that of stalking prey." "Sure," Sarek said. "Don't bring that up around my dad." "But it's true," the lion said. "There's no indication that—" "Sure," Sarek warned. "Our father almost lost everything to gambling. It doesn't matter how much scientific research there is, his life is the only evidence he's going to go by. And that's why I know Bo's being careful with how much he gambles, if not how much he talks about it." Trumbull looked at his relatives. "Can I count on the two of you to keep Bo and Dad out of each other's way? I need to head upstairs and keep the cubs company. We're going to keep my brother in the kitchen. Sarek indicated the stone table in the middle of the room. Tie him up to the prep room if needed. If you do that, Trembor said, heading for the door, hide the knives. It might give Dad ideas. The closing door cut off Bo's snarky reply and the other brother's speculations. He heard the sound of running as he went up the stairs to the attic, and the scene matched. Everyone, except Isenson and Cielen, who looked stern as they supervised, ran after one another and tussled on the floor to laughter and playful snarls. Isenson seemed to have decided he wasn't a cub anymore, now that his brother, Heralex, had moved on to the adult table, and he was learning to hunt with the females. Cielen, on the other hand, had always acted older than she was at 11. She could already match Serene's severity. Uncle Trembor! A small bundle of fur in a blue dress ran at him, leaving behind her tussling companion. She climbed up his leg before he could pick her up. Did you bring me a treat? He cradled her in his arm as he walked to the old couch and sat. Not today, he said, his words distorted by her pulling at his lips and checking his teeth. Against his will, he found himself back on that day of Marlot's first visit to his parents' house for the family dinner. The wolf had sat in this couch, frozen in terror of all the cubs there, as Dara sat on his lap, looking at his teeth, going over proper dental hygiene. The wolf hadn't had any idea what to do with them, and Trembor had just watched from the doorway, arms still in a cast, and falling more in love with him for allowing the cubs to terrorize him like that. Is Uncle Marlot here today? Muriel asked, and pulling him out of the memory. Of the cub she'd taken to the wolf the most. Trembor swallowed the pain of the memory, and her question brought. No, he isn't. I told you last time. He won't be coming anymore. The 9-year-old's fail. The 9-year-old's face fell. Who ate him? What? No, no one ate him. I explained it. What had he said the last time? Right, the same thing he had to say now, and hope the cubs understood. It didn't work out between us. But you love him, don't you? Ronik asked. Trembor swallowed. He didn't want to go through this again, but Ronik's family hadn't been at the last dinner. He'd always answered the cubs' questions. He'd promised himself years ago. He'd always answer the cubs' questions. He promised himself years ago. He had yet to break it. He wasn't going to do so today. I did, but sometimes that isn't enough. Then you need to talk with him, Cielen said, authority in her voice. You have to sit down and work out the problem what the problem is so you can fix it. You didn't leave me a choice, Marlot said, looking and sounding saddened by having hacked Trembor's pad. You didn't leave me a choice. The other male had said years before, looking and sounding sudden as he stood over Trembor, whose muzzle was bleeding, his blood on the other lion's knuckle. He shook the memories away. And swallowed the anger that came with them. Sometimes it doesn't work. The too serious young female shook her head. Serene says that when you have a problem, you sit down and you talk it over until you don't have a problem anymore. He narrowed his eyes in suspicion. He narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Serene said that? Cielen nodded. He couldn't imagine the easiest to anger of his mothers advocating sitting down and talking. He'd heard how she and his father resolved their problems when he was a teen, and the level of shouting involved would never be considered talking. There were times he wondered if they loved each other, but after the shouting was done, they were always tender with each other. As he'd grown older, he decided that their ability to argue and scream at one another and then make up and still be tender was the best way to define love. He'd wished he and Marlot would have had something that resilient. You didn't leave me any choice. But he knew the pattern, had learned them the hard way. He knew the patterns, had learned them the hard way, and he wasn't letting himself fall into them again. The lump was back in his throat, and this time took multiple attempts before he could swallow it away. His eyes stung, but he didn't cry. He wouldn't cry. That wolf didn't deserve that, not after tricking him as he had. The cubs sensed his discomfort, and the next questions were about things, about other things, simple things, even to a cub. Trevor thought, even to a even to a cub, Thornber thought and smiled, appreciating the work they put into distracting him. He answered them, listened to the adventures they had since the last family dinner. The cubs speaking over the cubs speaking over each other to demonstrate whose adventure had been the most adventurous. And quickly they were back to tussling and running around the attic. You know what? That's too long for a semicolon. And with him there, even his ensign and Seelen allowed themselves to act their age and join in, although she required a little more prodding on this part. When the sound of a closing door and voices of females reached the attic, the cubs ran down the stairs and Trembor followed them. He hugged his mothers and sisters. Heralex was bloody but proudly carrying his own kill, a small antelope. As the greeting ended, he noticed Bo and Sirik arguing away from everyone, taking one of the away from everyone. Taking one of the horses over his shoulder, Trembor headed for them, acting as a barrier in case anyone else wanted to listen in. But I always help with the kills, Bo pleaded softly. Yeah, but the way you and Dad are right now, it's not a good idea, Sirik replied. You won't be able to help it. You'll say something and you're going to be fighting again. But it's tradition. The oldest males prepare the kills. What is it going to look like if I'm not there? It's going to look like you're doing the smart thing, Sirik replied, and Tremor was certain there was a for once in there. Which wasn't fair, but Sirik had been dealing with the two of them for a few hours before Trembor arrived, so he didn't know how tired he was of this. Why don't you cede your place to Heralex? Trembor said before Bo commented. By his expression, he caught the unsaid sentiment too. He's your son, and I'm sure Dad would love to see what you've taught him. Bo pushed the mane out of his eyes with both hands. Okay, but just this once. I'm not letting Dad chase me out of the kitchen. He left to find his son. How long has he been going to the gambling houses? Sirik asked. Tremor shrugged, going over what his brother has said. It's the first time I've heard about it, but he said he likes to go there after a hard day, so it wasn't a one-time thing. Sirik sighed and shook himself. Come on, let's go to the kitchen before someone decides we need replacing too. Huh. Yes, well, that's going to be annoying. Thought I'd fixed all of them. Don't be shy with it, Term said to Erelix. It's dead, it's not going to complain. The young lion had taken 3 times as long as the older ones to skin his kill, but he had done a perfect job of it. He was still nervous, even if everyone else was discreet when looking at him work. Are you up on the Survivor show, Dad? Sirik asked. The older lion shook his head. I lost interest after last season. It's just been more of the same as the last 3 years. As the last three. I think the show's run its course. They're on one of the volcanic islands in the middle of the Farewell Ocean, Trevor said. It's worth it just for the scenery, but I do agree with you. At this point, it's getting predictable. The prey will do something to try to teach the predators they don't have to eat them, that they can get their meat from the ocean, or that bugs are meat too. A couple will try it, at least one switches diet, but then they have enough and they eat the prey. That's how it should be, Torum said. The whole thing's fake anyway, Sirik said. There's no way they actually were on an island with a primitive tribe. That's not that they ever show them. There are rules governing what you can and can't do with such tribes in the area. The Forwell is outside every country's jurisdiction, Tom said. One of the conservation groups would have to mount an offensive to keep the film crew and contestant from setting foot on the island. He smiled. Now that's a show I'd watch, but no one tried to stop them. We know by now, since that was filmed last year. Do you and Marlot watch the show together? Erlex asked. Trembor cursed himself as the knife slid and cut his finger. Erlex, that isn't the subject we talk about in this house, Turin said in a gentle tone. It's okay, Dad. Trembor opened the drawer and took out the medical disinfectant and sealant from it. It's not going to sink in at the same time for everyone. We used to. He winced at the stink of the disinfectant. Erlik's shoulders slumped. Sorry, he whispered. I forgot. As I said, it's okay. I liked him, the young lion said quietly. Trembor closed his eyes. The lump was back. If only loving someone was enough. But he'd had broken bones to prove that one-way love wasn't a good thing. You didn't leave me any choice. He trimmed the fur away and applied the sealant over the cut, then went back to his kill. This moment was about his family, and Marlot wasn't part of that anymore, and that was for the best. This concludes Chapter 2 of A Series of Death. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the whole story, as well as the other books in the series, they are available on all major e-retailers. If you want a different way to support me, that's on my Patreon, where you can also get access to just about everything I've written. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.